Okay, let's dive into something fascinating today. We've pulled together a collection of sources that tell the story of a few interconnected lives.
Hmm.
It's a real deep dive into relationships, the pressures of society back then, and, well, the surprising ways people try to find freedom in a world that feels, pretty constrained.
Yeah, it's a rich set of materials.
Our journey starts with this single image described so vividly in the source material. Picture this. A man, Mr. Brumley, he's a successful author.
Right.
He's adjusting his shoelace at his home, Black Strand, lovely place. He looks up and there's this woman standing in the room.
And the description is just perfect, isn't it?
It really is. It mentions a bang of brown hair coming over one temple, a large silk bow, and her expression. It shifts from like naive horror at walking in on him,
Which you can imagine.
right, to this quick, intelligent appreciation. And she's standing near a big white cast of a statue of Venus in the window.
That detail, the Venus,
Yeah.
it sets the tone.
It does, and it's this seemingly simple moment,
Hmm.
but it kicks off this really complex exploration of lives, hidden depths, and that whole struggle for independence.
And what's so compelling, I think, right away is how the sources just drop us into this scene. You immediately meet the key figures, see their environment.
Exactly.
We're looking at the world of Mr. Brumley, the author, Sir Isaac Harman, who's this wealthy businessman, and the woman he encounters, Lady Harman.
Mm-hmm.
And these sources, they track their personal stories, but also set them against these really significant social pressures, a changing world.
Totally. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to unpack all of that. We want to pull out the crucial insights, the surprising bits of knowledge.
Find the connections.
Yes, and understand the core dynamics. It's all about that clash between control and independence, isn't it?
Definitely. And the tension between sort of duty and desire.
Right, what you should do versus what you want, and how these very personal journeys kind of intersect with the broader social shifts happening then. So, yeah, get ready. You might uncover some things that surprise you.
Okay, so let's start with the man we meet first, Mr. Brumley.
Mm-hmm.
The sources, they paint this picture of a man of letters. He's witty, observant, commercially successful,
Got it all, seemingly.
seemingly. But underneath, he's described as having this deeply romantic and imaginative inner life. And interestingly, the sources explicitly note his view that women are the most interesting things in a full and interesting universe.
That line, it tells you a lot about his perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's observing, yes, but maybe also sort of idealizing.
Could be. And that first encounter at Blackstrand really highlights this. It's his former home, the source says, full of memories, a place of accomplished beauty.
Yeah.
And he feels he has to leave it. He actually says something like, life is changing, going on.
It's almost like this meeting with Lady Harman is, for him, the embodiment of that change he senses is necessary.
It's a fascinating layer, isn't it? He's rooted in this place of beauty and memory, and then she arrives, this unexpected disruption.
Mm-hmm.
And that mutual inspection, the source describes, her shock turning to intelligent appreciation, all against the backdrop of his past in that beautiful room with the Venus statue. It signals right away this is more than just a casual meeting.
So who is this woman, then? Lady Harman. We learn she's young. Brumley guesses maybe not more than 24.
Yeah, very young.
Comes across as pretty simple-mannered, but still has this quiet dignity. And importantly, you can't miss the luster of wealth about her.
But here's where the sources add that crucial background, the part that complicates that initial impression.
Right.
She wasn't born into wealth. She was brought up genteelly poor by her widowed mother.
Ah.
And her education was at one of those traditional boarding schools, the kind where girls did subjects, but mostly learned to navigate these complex social hierarchies simmering just beneath the surface.
Right, the unspoken curriculum. And this background, it leads us to this pivotal moment the sources describe. At just 18, she marries Sir Isaac.
18. So young.
And the circumstances laid out are pretty telling. There's a delay mentioned, and we find out it's because Sir Isaac is waiting for his title.
Ah, the baronetcy.
Exactly. He actually says to her, "You will be Lady Harman," and then boasts, "I would have given double. I'd have bought the rotten thing outright." It just frames the whole marriage from the start, doesn't it?
It really does. And the sources, well, they don't pull any punches describing her experience of it. She calls the marriage unpleasant.
Unpleasant. Understatement, perhaps.
Probably. Filled with crumpling indignities and horrible nervous stresses, she feels it was a bargain she had rather unwittingly made.
Wow. And despite living in luxury, this huge house in Putney, she feels utterly confined. There's that stunned feeling she describes.
And that amazing phrase,
The nightmare of butlers.
yes, nightmare of butlers, it just perfectly captures that feeling of oppressive, impersonal wealth. It's not comfort, it's a cage.
It is. A cage built of servants and routine. And Sir Isaac's character, as the sources detail him, makes it clear why. He's presented as a man of unpretentious acquisitiveness.
Meaning?
Basically focused solely on making money, on business, distracted by no aesthetic or intellectual interests whatsoever.
Right. Pure commerce.
Right.
And his possessiveness is portrayed as almost absolute. He sees everything as his my door, my room.
Yeah.
The sources even point out his intense jealousy, and not just of, other men, but of her past, her childish worship of her dead father, her religious faith.
Even her reading. The poet Wordsworth, of all things.
Wordsworth. It wasn't just a lack of shared interests. It sounds like a real desire to control her inner life, her thoughts, everything.
So you can really see how this life, even with all the money, would just sow these seeds of deep discontent.
Absolutely.
This feeling of being confined, plus the lack of any real connection, it sparks this growing uneasiness of responsibility in Lady Harman, a real yearning to do something, find a purpose, or just escape.
And the sources show her world then beginning to open up, feeding this desire. She starts to learn about social issues from people like Susan Burnett, a seamstress.
Ah, okay. A different perspective.
Completely. Susan gives her this window into the difficult realities for waitresses. Waitresses in Sir Isaac's own tea shops.
Oh, wow. That's close to home.
Right. Mentioning troubling practices like sending girls out with fellers into empty houses, and how there's a sort of man won't leave you alone. And Susan's angry because her own sister Alice works there and is taking their money.
So she's getting this direct personal account, powerful stuff. But it's not just personal, is it? The sources also say she's reading critical articles.
And the London Lion newspaper, specifically targeting Sir Isaac's business practices.
What sort of things?
Issues like the fuss about little shopkeepers being squeezed out, the waitresses' low wages, even details about Normandy eggs and his impact on the landscape. Apparently he tried to buy Shakespeare's Cliff and managed to get the Toad Rock. It's this combination of, lived experience from Susan and this public critique that's shaping her awareness.
That makes sense. And on top of this, she starts meeting women with different perspectives.
Yeah, we hear about Georgina, who's involved in the suffrage movement.
Okay.
And a particularly influential figure, Agatha Alimony. She introduces Lady Harman to more radical ideas.
Like what?
Well, Agatha talks about women needing to be absolute mistress of herself and the fundamental need to be free to develop. These ideas must have sounded revolutionary in her context.
Oh, absolutely.
And clearly resonated deeply with Lady Harman's own growing unease.
So this expanding awareness, this growing desire for something more, it inevitably leads to escalating conflict with Sir Isaac.
You'd expect it to.
And the sources detail how his possessiveness just curdles into outright control. He actually hires a detective, the man in gray, to follow her.
That's chilling. It really shows the extent of his need to monitor and contain her.
Which brings us to this really striking moment of rebellion that's described. After going to a lunch where women's freedom is being discussed, Lady Harman does something quite dramatic. She breaks a window during a Liberal Party reception.
Wow. Just like
an impulsive, powerful act. The sources tell us she gets arrested, spends time in prison.
Goodness, dear.
And immediately, Agatha Alimony claims her, not just as an ally, but as a convert. And she urges strategic resistance. She says, don't flee, fight in your home. It's your home. That is the great principle. It's not his.
Redefining the battleground. Clever.
Exactly. Stay and fight from within.
Okay, so following this dramatic event, the sources introduce a new development. Sir Isaac agrees to fund hostels for his female employees.
Hostels? Why would he do that?
Well, the material presents his motivation quite clearly. Partly it's a business strategy. It notes the admirable advertisement such firms as Lever and Cadbury get from looking after their workers. Good PR, basically.
Right, okay. Good PR. But the sources make it abundantly clear that Lady Harman sees this project very differently.
Through a completely different lens, I imagine.
Totally. For her, it's not advertising. It's a chance for real work, a mission. It represents this concrete path to finding the purpose and maybe the freedom she's been denied in her marriage.
But Knowing Sir Isaac, you suspect it won't be straightforward.
Not at all. This promising project quickly becomes another source of conflict, just as you'd guess. These sources really detail this. Lady Harman's desire for a humane, flexible approach. It clashes head-on with the rigid, rule-bound management style imposed by a Mrs. Pembrose.
Ah, Mrs. Pembrose. And the sources give us these revealing little details about her, don't they? She has expert knowledge and pretension generally, a metallic resonance in her voice, and a lisp.
Those details are so vivid, they paint quite a picture, and the sources highlight the core of their conflict. Lady Harman actually tears up a card listing these rigid rules.
Does she? Wow.
Yeah, an action she later reflects was symbolical and determining, kind of fixing her stance against this harsh discipline. There's tension around the girl's natural behavior, running in corridors, having sweet disorder in her hair.
Things Mrs. Pembrose probably hated.
Exactly, which Mrs. Pembrose deems totally unacceptable, demanding sweeping dismissals. It's the human element versus this cold institutional rigidness.
And where does Sir Isaac stand in all this?
Well, ultimately, his business priorities override the stated humanitarian goal. The sources recount him refusing to allow striking international girls access to the hostels.
So much for helping workers.
Right. He demands the intention was to provide proper housing for our own people first and foremost, and adds, with frustration, and haven't we provided it, damn them?
Charming. So Lady Harman is caught in the middle again.
Exactly. Trying to navigate these entanglements, as the source puts it.
Meanwhile, what about Mr. Brumley? Is he still in the picture?
Oh, yes. While all this is unfolding with the hostels, his interest in Lady Harman continues. The sources show him undertaking extensive research into social conditions, specifically for the hostels project.
Really? So he gets involved?
Deeply involved. He dives into the living-in system, the reality of suburban little houses, these jerry-built sham cottages, and the pervasive waste and aimlessness he discovers. And it has this profound effect on him.
It changes him.
Definitely. It's a turning point for his own perspective. The sources actually say this research makes him more charitable and romantic, fundamentally challenging the system of unsound assumptions he previously held about society.
Interesting. So it's not just about her anymore.
No. He starts to see the hostels not just as her project, but as a possibility for a modernized, more collective and civilized family life. But the sources also subtly highlight his internal struggle here. His romantic feelings for Lady Harman are all tangled up with his genuine desire to support her work and his own evolving social conscience. It's complex.
Okay. So as these personal and professional struggles are intensifying, the sources then describe Sir Isaac's health declining.
Yes. His illness brings increasing irritability, these passionate outbursts, and deep suspicion. He ends up moving to Italy for his health.
But even from Italy, his need for control doesn't fade, does it?
Not one bit. The sources reveal this moment where he opens Lady Harman's mail specifically, a letter from Mr. Brumley.
No, he wouldn't.
He does, and confronts her, shouting, "Friendship, harmless friendship, look what your friend says."
Unbelievable.
And chillingly, the sources describe his plan, revealed during his illness, to use his will as a final instrument of control over her.
Wow.
He intends to structure it so her inheritance and, crucially, her control of the hostels are tied to her remaining a widow.
So even from beyond the grave.
Exactly, his ultimate attempt to possess her.
The sources then recount his sudden death in Italy. Quite abruptly, it seems.
Very abruptly, the doctor's blunt statement captures it. "Madam, he is really dead." Just like that.
And Lady Harman's reaction, that must have been complex.
Incredibly revealing, as described in the sources. Initial astonishment, yes, but it's quickly replaced by this profound sense of peace, release, overwhelming freedom.
Freedom.
The text uses beautiful language. Gladness broke upon her soul as the day breaks. She feels she'd never before realized the meaning of death, and understands now that life, her life with him, was over. It's a release from a long, long confinement.
And the terms of the will,
Yeah.
they eventually confirm his manipulative plan.
They do. When revealed later, they confirm it. Everything goes to the children, managed by trustees. Unless Lady Harman doesn't remarry.
Ah, there's the catch.
There's the catch. If she stays a widow, she gets a substantial allowance, but, and this is crucial, she loses control of the hostels.
So it's a double bind. Freedom from the marriage, but potentially losing her purpose, her work.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Mr. Brumley hears about Sir Isaac's death and feels this surge of hope.
You can imagine.
But then the sources detail how he learns about the will's conditions, apparently by accidentally overhearing a conversation.
Oh dear. And how does he react to that?
Well, initially, there's this flicker of satisfaction that she won't inherit Sir Isaac's massive fortune, maybe thinking it makes her more attainable or less burdened by that world.
Mm-hmm.
But that's immediately overtaken by the realization that the will jeopardizes the hostels project.
Which has become important to him, too.
Exactly. This work has become vital to his own evolving sense of purpose, and the potential loss of her leadership there is a severe blow to him. The sources describe him being hunted through London by a feverish unrest, frantically researching matrimonial law, desperate to understand the implications.
Wow, he's really invested.
Deeply. This internal turmoil leads him to the final dramatic confrontation described in the sources. He goes to see Lady Harman at Blackstrand after Sir Isaac's death, convinced he's offering her rescue, love, and the solution to her dilemma. He proposes marriage.
He proposes,
Okay.
and her response, given everything she's been through.
Well, her response draws on the entirety of her journey. She explains how seeing Sir Isaac vulnerable near the end, when one suddenly finds they aren't, he cried. It shifted her perspective somehow.
It's humanized him, maybe.
Perhaps. She also talks about her duty towards the children, calling them such helpless little things who are left too much to nurses and strangers.
Right, the practicalities, the responsibilities.
But the most powerful part, according to the sources, is her declaration of her newly won freedom under the will. Paradoxically, the very document designed to control her has actually made her, in her words, one of the free women.
Wow. How does she mean?
She feels she's paid my penalties and my service is over. She's done her time, served her sentence in that marriage, and now she desires friendship with Mr. Brumley, not disturbing things like romance or marriage.
She turns him down.
She does.
Wow.
And the hostels project becomes the absolute central point of her refusal. She asks him the pivotal question, have you no thought for our hostels?
Oof, that lays bare the conflict, doesn't it?
Completely. His desire for romantic union versus her commitment to her work, her purpose, her newfound independence, even if it means financial sacrifice and, ironically, losing control of the very project she fought for under the will's terms.
What a position to be in. And Brumley's reaction to this?
Intense. The emotional climax is raw. Mr. Brumley, faced with her refusal and her focus on the work, has this pained, eloquent outburst. He cries out, "What do such things matter when a man is in love?"
Oh, the romantic idealist surfaces again.
Big time. He calls man the absurd animal, tormented by unrealized possibilities, by the huge gap between desire and reality. The sources describe his subsequent breakdown and flight, literally whooping and sobbing as he runs away.
Good heavens, he completely loses it.
Completely. And then comes the truly unexpected ending described in the sources. Lady Harman is portrayed as exceedingly distressed and astonished by his raw emotion.
You didn't expect that.
Not at all. She chases after him, genuinely worried for him. The final action is sudden, decisive. The source recounts. She catches him, manages to somehow upset him neatly backwards.
She trips him.
Something like that. And then, described as doing nothing by halves, she kisses the astonished Mr. Brumley full upon his mouth.
She kisses him after rejecting him.
Yes. And the text then just abruptly states, the end. The end of this particular part of the story, anyway.
Wow. What a trajectory the sources lay out for us there. Lady Harman, moving from being trapped in that gilded cage to this difficult, hard-won freedom. And her purpose becomes defined not by a relationship, but by her work, her independence.
And Mr. Brumley's journey is equally significant, isn't it? From that slightly detached, romantic observer to someone deeply affected by social reality, grappling with this messy intersection of love and duty and a changing world. He changes profoundly.
Yeah, he really does. The sources leave us with this powerful tension, don't they? Is freedom truly found in personal relationships, or is it in committing to a larger purpose?
That's the question. Can romantic desire ever truly align with that drive for meaningful work or social contribution? Or are they always sort of in conflict?
It's complex. So considering Lady Harman's entire arc, her escape from Sir Isaac's control, her battle for purpose through the hostels, that striking declaration of freedom under the very will meant to restrict her. And then that final, completely unexpected act of kissing Mr. Brumley right after rejecting his proposal.
Yeah.
What does it ultimately mean? For a woman of that time, or, maybe any time, to claim her autonomy, to define her own happiness and purpose when she's faced with all these complexities of love, duty, and the lingering legacy of control. What about Lady Harman's choices here stands out most to you?